Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool Transfer Talk show on Football Talk podcast. My name is Ozzie, and I'm your host for this evening. Now, after winning the league title last weekend, I don't think transfers would have been a huge discussion amongst Liverpool fans, and rightly so, as we should be celebrating and enjoying this moment as we've secured our 20th league title. Having said that, with the job done now and the trophy heading over to Anfield in the coming weeks, we still need to have one eye on next season and see where we can improve um, in the squad. So during the show, I'll go through some of the latest rumors circulating around online and the web. So if there's any rumors that you guys have come across and I haven't mentioned, please feel free to drop a comment and let me know. And also the rumors that I have seen, we'll kind of assess the stories and see if there's any weight to the headline. So let's begin with the first rumor, and that is Adam Wharton. So Adam Wharton has had a stop-start season. Picked up an injury earlier on, uh, but whenever called upon, has shown his ability in recent weeks. He had a fantastic performance against Aston Villa in the FA Cup semi-final. Sorry, um, a player that whenever I've seen him play, he really stood out for me, especially last season. He only joined Crystal Palace in the January window, but you can kind of see his ability. He just looked head and shoulders above everyone in the team. Technically really good. Left-footed, but can play with his right if needed. Good passing variation. Strong, aggressive in the tackle. Defensively sound. So for me, good all-rounder, good player to build your sort of team around. Because he's very young. Um, the only stumbling point with regards to Alan Wharton joining Liverpool is his contract. So his contract ends in 2029. So of course he signed a bumper deal when he joined the club last year. So to sign a player that has 4 years remaining, you're expected to pay a bit of a hefty price to acquire the services of that player. It's been rumored that Palace want at least £80 million for Adam Wharton. Now, as much as I rate the player, I don't think that is the valuation that will meet the metrics at Liverpool headquarters. I don't think that that's something we'd pay. Only saying that because I think there's other areas of the team that need to be addressed. Centre mid is an area that I feel like we do need to add to strengthen uh, in terms of the depth of the squad. But I think there's other areas in the team that need to be prioritized before the midfield. So in my eyes, we need a striker. We need a number 9. We haven't really found a prolific striker in our team. So that has to be priority. That has to be a big money signing, in my opinion. And then you can look at your left back positions, and then I'd go for midfielder after that. If Trent Alexander ends up leaving, then that has to be prioritized ahead of signing a midfielder, in my opinion. So be interesting to see, what areas of the squad Liverpool address in this window. Uh, but I do like Wharton. I just don't think that's a realistic target. I think that's going to be way above our budget. So yeah, too pricey for us, unfortunately. Now, this isn't a direct rumor, but we have seen a lot of rumors circulating in regards to Alvarez possibly returning to the Premier League and joining Liverpool. And then you've got Darwin Nunez being linked with a move to Atletico Madrid. Now, he's not being regarded as a direct replacement for Alvarez, but he is being earmarked as a replacement for Griezmann, who is leaving the club this summer. So, for me, in terms of Darwin Nunes, that would be a fantastic move for him. I think he's the perfect striker for Diego Simeone. Like that's the striker he would love to have in his team. Someone that's aggressive, tenacious, on the front foot at all times. He will suit the dynamics of that team, and he will definitely fit within the profile and the tactics that the coach will want to deploy from him. So I think Nunes will probably fit the ethos of the manager at Atletico Madrid very well. Julian Alvarez, despite being very prolific this season, this season he's played 50 games so far, 27 goals, 5 assists. But there's rumors circulating that he's not happy at the club and would be open to a move if something was on the table. Now, with these rumors, you've always got to take it with a pinch of salt. Now, on paper, I think Alvarez is probably the perfect striker for us to sign because we can't say 100%, but we don't know what type of striker Arne Slot would like to recruit in the summer. Does he want to have a false nine, or does he want to go for a more traditional number nine, someone that's played up top on the shoulder? It's not very clear. I think us fans are probably getting a more of an indication that we need a more of a prolific number nine, someone that plays up top rather than a false number nine. But that might also be because we've, you know, gone past the idea of having a false nine in the team. That's something we used to deploy under the young club. We need to evolve as a team and go back to playing a different way. And I think with the amount of chances that we create, we do need that gunman in front of goal. That's the type of striker we need. So with Julian Alvarez, you've got a player who can do both. He is prolific in front of goal, really good in one-on-one situations. But at the same time, he can drop deep. He can link up the midfield and attack very, very well. He can even play on the wings. So he's a player that gives you that versatility. He attacks the channel very, very well. And I feel like he would be the perfect signing for us. He's already got Premier League experience playing for Man City for the last 2 years. So, that's someone that's ready made to join a team like Liverpool back in the Premier League. But who knows? Because he joined Atletico Madrid for a very big price. I believe the fee was around £80 million plus add-ons that would reach a total of £95 million. So the only sort of, I don't know the causes, of course, I don't have the ins and outs, but my assumption would be that the add-ons would involve, them winning La Liga and certain trophies and certain targets. So all of those add-ons would not have been activated in his first season at Atletico Madrid. Like very, very unlikely that would be the case. So they paid pretty much 80 million for him. So from what I've heard in terms of rumors, Atletico Madrid value Nunez at 50 million. That would be the price that they would pay to sign Darwin Nunez. Now, for me, I would accept it. I'll be honest with you, but we did receive a lot of interest from Saudi in the January window, and they were willing to pay 70, 75 million. So they'll certainly come knocking again, in my opinion, and that might be a possible destination for Darwin Nunez. But if we were to do a deal with Atletico Madrid, like swap deals are very, it's not very common in this day and age. It's more of a thing you play in your video game sort of thing. But it's not something that's completely impossible. So for me, this might sound a bit ambitious, but I think we could do a deal with Atletico where maybe we give them 50, 60 million plus Darwin Núñez to sweeten the deal. And if you, calculate that in terms of valuation, that means that, if we give them 50, 60 million, we value Nunes around the same price. So they end up obtaining 100 million plus 110 million. So I think that would be a fair deal because they would get more money from what they paid for Alvarez, which is 80 million pounds. And they get the player that they probably would have earmarked as a potential target or a potential replacement for either Alvarez or Griezmann. They do need to address that striker role. So it could be a win-win situation for everyone. Nunes gets a move to La Liga. He plays for a club where I think he will be wanted. He will be respected there, and we get a striker that we're dreaming of right now in terms of someone to complete the puzzle in our attacking line, and we're getting him at a good valuation as well. So who knows? Drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Is this realistic or is this just me, playing too much FIFA and thinking, a bit too overboard there? But both clubs want to sign these players. There's interest there. It's public knowledge. So you just never know. Now, in terms of Alvarez wanting to return to Premier League, I'm not quite so sure because I've heard rumors that his missus, didn't like living in England. That wasn't the lifestyle that she wanted. So that was one of the reasons why he wanted to leave Man City. So it wouldn't make sense for them to return back to, you know, rainy and windy weather in England. But at the same time, Liverpool have a unique atmosphere amongst clubs in England where we've got a lot of South American players. So it'll be like having a, like a little South America within our squad because you've got players that's speaking Spanish, Portuguese, so it'll be a place where he can be you know integrate very quickly and very smoothly, and it could work well. And his best mate, ironically, is Alexis McAllister. That is public knowledge as well. So it seems to tick all the boxes. I would love Alvarez to be our sort of striker. I still would like Isak, but I think between the two, I would not make any fuss whatsoever. But I think Alvarez does tick a lot of the boxes. I just don't feel like it's neither are realistic signings, might be brutally honest with you, but if it's one or the other, I think Isak would be the most likely one just because of his situation where he's at Newcastle and he wants to move on and play in Champions League football. Alvarez, it seems to be a bit more personal, where maybe the lifestyle doesn't suit um, what his family wants, so he might not want to return to England. So if that's the case, you go for the other option, which ends up being Isak. So look, it might be unrealistic, but hey, a man can dream, right? So we've just won the title. I'm thinking onwards and upwards. Hopefully, you know, we could sign a player of Alvarez's caliber. That's the striker we need, in my opinion. So watch this space. Only time will tell. We'll see what happens with this rumor. Another player that's probably unrealistic, but we've got to discuss it, is Eduardo Camavinga. Now, rumors are suggesting that Real Madrid are open to selling the midfielder this summer. Now, if this was if there was any ounce of truth to this rumor, it would be a major coup for any team. But I don't think there is any truth to the rumor, and I think it's unrealistic. Uh, in terms of how much it would cost, I think it cost around 60, 70 million, that kind of range, which for some fans might be a slight gamble, but for me, I think that's a price, worth taking a punt on. Like, it's a risk worth taking. For me, in terms of what he brings to the table, he's got everything in his locker. He's a great technician, has great ball retention ability, great passing range. He's dynamic. He's industrious on the ball. He's defensively sound. Um, he's the complete midfielder, and I would love to see a player like Camavinga coming into the squad because I think he complements the likes of Gravenberg and McAllister very well. So look, if this rumor is true and Camavinga is available, he would be my number one midfielder target. That's how much I rate him. He's only 22 years of age, and I actually think he can improve further under the right team and the right system. I think he could do really, really well. So for me, he would be the dream signing, but I think I'm clutching. So let's see what happens. Next player, and not a player that's linking you know into the club, is a potential departure, and that is Diego Jota. Now, a lot of rumors circulating in terms of his future at the club, and still a bit of uncertainty if he remains at Liverpool next season. He's getting a lot of interest within the Premier League, but also there's a lot of noise coming from Saudi Arabia now. Apparently, according to rumors, Liverpool are looking to receive around £45 million for Diogo Jota. Now, is that a bit ambitious from the club to retain that sort of fee for the striker, or do I see that being a possibility? I actually think it's a possibility because if it's Saudi, they'll be willing to spend that kind of money on a striker. Now, we know that he's had his injury issues in the last few years, but he'll be moving over to a league where it's not as intense, it's not as physical. So he should be able to manage his body a bit better under those sort of circumstances. So 45 million is not a wild transfer fee. I think it's realistic to kind of gain that kind of fee. He's got interest in the Premier League. I think Newcastle have shown interest over the past year or two. So that could be a potential destination for the striker. I wouldn't like him to remain at the Premier League, if I'm honest, because he's such a good finisher. And I don't want it to be where you'd be selling to a potential rival and it comes to bite us on the backside in the coming future. So for me, if Jota was to leave, I'd rather he move on to play in the Saudi Pro League. We get a decent amount of money from him and we can use that to reinvest into the squad and sign that prolific striker we want. Now, of course, I mentioned Nunez earlier on, where According to rumours, we rejected a £70 million move or 75 million pound move in the January window. Now, let's say Al Nassr return with a bid of 70 million and then we get 45 for Jota. That's 115 million. That's enough to sign Isak. So if you were to sell these two strikers, you can sign an Isak. And, if you want to be someone that watches their money in terms of ownership, you can just get Jonathan David as your backup on a free transfer. So you've signed two strikers, you know, ready-made replacements for Jota and Nunez. So, probably a bit, ahead of myself there. But it's not a crazy shout, is there? So it is something that could be a reality for us, and I really hope Liverpool do try and sign a top striker. I think that's what's missing in our team. I mean, there's other areas where we've got the players there, but up top, Jota's been injury prone this season, and whenever he's called upon, he's been quite inconsistent. Nunes has been consistent all year round, and Diaz for me is a left winger. When he's played in the central role, he's done a decent job, but he's not the solution for us. So be a big, big summer for Liverpool to see what happens with Jota. Does he stay or does he go? Drop a comment and let me know what you guys think. Now, on to the next rumor. Mark Guehi now. I feel like this player is always linked with us for the last couple of years. So no surprise that he's linked with us once again. Um, but the interesting details regarding this rumor now is that Guehi is in his last year of his contract now. If you might recall, last summer, Newcastle placed multiple bids. I think it was four in total, and the latest bid was around £70 million, which Crystal Palace rejected very promptly, which I was quite surprised. I thought 70 million is a big fee, but maybe it was due to the timing. I think it was the last few days of the window, so maybe they couldn't find an adequate replacement. But this season, or this summer, I should say, because he's on his last year of his contract, he could be available, according to rumors, for a cut price of 40 to 50 million pounds. Now, the question is, should we target Mark Guehi as a player to add to the squad? It's very interesting. I think the first choice amongst us fans will probably be Hoyson to come in and be that centre back addition to the squad because he's 19 years old. His ceiling's really high. He's very good on the ball, and he looks like a special talent. But if Liverpool wanted to go for a more of a solid option, I think Guehi would be a good addition to the squad. I don't see him being a starter, but I do feel like he can complement Van Dijk and Konate very well. One good trait that he has, I used to think he was actually left footed. He's not left footed, he's a right footed defender. So that goes to show that he's, good on both feet, so he can play on either side in the centre back position. So for me, he'd be a good third choice centre back for us in the squad. Of course, if you're going to go off different sort of metrics and different sort of factors, he could, be a good option for us because he's homegrown. So, he fits that quota there. So for 40, 50 million pounds, it's actually a good deal. Now, if there is any truth to that rumor, I do think it's a deal that Liverpool should consider. But Hoyson is also available for that range, around that 50 million pound mark. So, big question: who would you go for? Would you go for a Guehi that's more experienced, or would you go for a player that has a very high ceiling in Hoyson? So, me personally, I'd go for Hoyson if I'm being honest with you. But he's got a lot of interest from a lot of clubs, particularly in the Premier League. He's got the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal. I think Manchester United have registered interest in as well, but he's also got interest from Real Madrid. So, when Real Madrid come knocking, they end up getting their man. So, if he goes to Real Madrid, it is what it is because I understand the lure for him to go there because he's just made his debut for the Spanish national team. So, if he was to be approached by Real Madrid, the biggest team in Spain, then it makes sense for him to make that move. So, if Hoyson wasn't available for whatever reason, I think Guehi would be a good alternative. I think that would be a solid option for us to have. It might not be an eye-catching sort of target for us, maybe because of he plays for Crystal Palace respectively. But whenever I've seen him play, he's been a very solid member of that team. He's a leader. He's their captain, and even when he's played for England, he probably had one of his best performances in the English shirt last summer when we were playing in the Euros. So I think he's one of our standout defenders, to be fair. So I think it's a good option, but you know, but around that 50, that 40, 50 million mark, I wouldn't go higher than. I think that'd be too pricey for a player of Guehi's ability. But drop a comment, let me know what you guys think. Uh, is Guehi a good fit for us next summer? Now, another young player that's been getting a lot of rave reviews and generating a lot of interest across Europe. And that is Elise Ben Seghir. Now, he's a Moroccan international player who played predominantly on the left wing, but can play as a number 10. Now, in terms of what he brings to the table, very skillful, uh, dribbles with a lot of flair. He's got good striking ability on him. He scores a lot of goals from outside the box. So he'd be a good left wing option. Now, in terms of his valuation, I don't know how much he'd cost. I'd probably say around 30, 40 million pounds. So, he's a player, 20 years of age. Definitely for one for the future, in my opinion. In terms of his ratio this year, 43 appearances, 9 goals, 4 assists. So not very high, but as a young player breaking into the team, I feel like he could be a good addition. Now, if we were to sell one of our attackers and we needed a replacement for that left hand side, he could be a good sort of understudy or a backup for Gakpo, for example. So definitely one to look out for. I think he's one that I'm going to keep an eye on in terms of, if I see any matches for Monaco, I might tune in just to see how he performs throughout the 90 minutes. But he's a very interesting player, very skillful. Um, I don't know if he's quite ready for the Premier League. I think the physicality would be my sort of question mark in terms of his adaptability if he was to join. Um, but there wouldn't be a huge pressure for him to have an impact right away. We've got the likes of Gakpo in the team who will be the starter in the team, but in due course he can definitely work his way around the team. Can also challenge for that number 10 role, force the Bosley. So he could be an interesting option. So definitely want to kind of watch and want to kind of remember because I think he is probably going to generate a lot of interest in the summer, and he could be on the move. Maybe not at Liverpool, but he could be on the move elsewhere. So definitely want to look out for. Uh, Next player is Luis Diaz. So if Luis Diaz was to depart, maybe a player like Benzema could be a good replacement. Now, Luis Diaz's future is still very much up in the air. No real sort of developments, but there has been strong suggestions that there are clubs in Saudi Arabia that would like to sign him and would be willing to pay around £65 million. Barcelona still showing interest as well in the winger, although they've got financial issues. So I don't know if they'll be willing to spend the money on Luis Diaz. It's going to be very interesting. Now, if you ask me, would I keep Diaz or sell him on this summer? I would keep him on for another year because his contract expires in 2027. So keep him on for another year. And if he still doesn't receive the contract extension that he's asking for, then he's in a good position to move on next year. I know his valuation may dip a little bit because it's only 1 year remaining on his contract, but I'd rather we get something than nothing. He goes away on a free transfer, which you can't rule out. It happens a lot under FSG. So for me, if he's shown indications that he wants to leave, that he's had enough, because then we're not meeting his terms in terms of a new contract, then this summer's the right one. But if he's willing to stay on, I'd keep him on board for 1 more year and just to kind of think about the future as well. With him staying for 1 more year, it also gives our young star, Rio Ngomora, the chance to gain valuable development playing for the under 21s and then hopefully by next, so not this season coming, as in the following season, as in 2026 onwards, he could be a player that we can put him in the first team. Not saying as a starter, but could be a squad member for us. In terms of his rise right now, it kind of reminds me when we had Raheem Sterling, where he came on board around 15 years of age from QPR, and he was making rave uh, reviews or rave sort of performances for our reserves, and then when he was 16, 17, that's when he broke into the team. So kind of could be a similar sort of trajectory for and Gamoha to come into the team as well. So when you've got Diaz and Gakpo as your first choice left wingers, it allows a young star to, bide their time and, you know, play to their sort of strengths and not feel the pressure of being impactful right away. He's not going to have that pressure if you've got the likes of Diaz and Gakpo ahead of him. So for me, I think it would make more sense to keep Diaz on board for at least another year. And if next year he still wants to leave or we still haven't come to a resolution of a new contract on the table, then next year would be the time. I think this summer we should keep him on and keep him on for one more year. But I know a lot of fans have split opinions about this, so please feel free to drop a comment. Let me know what you would do with Diaz. Would you sell him or would you keep him for another season? Next player, Morgan Rogers. Now he's been linked with us very strongly in the last couple of weeks. Um, Player that I really like. Whenever I've seen him play for Villa, I think he's always impressed me. Uh, predominantly plays as a number 10, but can play up top if required, and can also play on the left wing if needed. Very skillful, very strong on and off the ball. Uh, he's got flair whenever he gets past players, so very easy on the eye to watch. My only concern would be his end product, where I feel like his decision making in the final third needs to improve, but that will come with age and time because it's his first full season in the Premier League. So I feel like he's showing that he's got great potential of becoming a very, very good player uh, in the future. My only concern for Rodgers would be his transfer fee. He might, not him personally, but as in his club, Aston Villa, might command a huge amount, maybe 60, 70 million. But having said that, if Villa do not qualify for the Champions League this season, then they may have to sell players because they've already had PSR issues in the past. It could reoccur this summer again, so they'll have to sell one of their assets. Could be Ollie Watkins, who was strongly linked with a move to Arsenal in the January window, so he could be someone that they would part ways with, or it could be Morgan Rogers, who would command more of a higher transfer fee because of his potential, and I think he's got a higher sort of valuation as well due to his age. So it'll be very interesting. I don't see it being a realistic sign. If I'm being, I don't think Villa will want to part ways because he's probably the future of the club. He's a player that will probably try and build around. So I don't think they'd want to part ways so soon. But if they have to do it due to financial issues, then it could be a time, could be a player that we could sign now in terms of where he would fit in the team. He challenged Szoboszlai for that number 10 role. I think they would rotate quite well, and Rodgers can also play alongside Szoboszlai, playing on the left wing. Or if we have an option where you know our strikers aren't scoring goals, he can be a player that could lead the line for us as well. So he would be a good addition to the squad. I just don't know if it's a realistic option, but we'll see what happens in the summer. There seems to be a lot of rumors circulating that I've labeled unrealistic, and I think he falls into this category, and that is Rodrygo. Now, the Real Madrid star has been linked with a move to Liverpool, but it's also been presented that we were close to signing him a few years ago, where a £3 million deal was agreed, but Rodrygo didn't want to move to Europe at the time and wanted to stay on and play for Santos. So I don't know, maybe because of that, they're trying to align it with current times and are suggesting that we might go in to sign the Brazilian winger again this summer. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't think this is a realistic option at all. Um, Real Madrid would ask for a crazy amount of money, um, and I don't think he'll be available for sale because there's already question marks with regards to Vinicius Junior's future. Now, if he was to leave, then Rodrigo would get to play in his favorite position, which is left wing. Now, for Real Madrid, he predominantly plays on the right. So, despite that, he does produce good games in both positions. Um, but yeah, for us to acquire a player of his service, Real Madrid would want about 100 million, if I'm being brutally honest. And I don't think it's an area that we need to invest so heavy into the squad. If we're spending that kind of money, it should be towards a striker, not a winger, in my opinion. And speaking of opinions, this might be a very unpopular opinion, but I don't regard Rodrigo as an elite attacker. I think he's a good player, but I don't see him as a needle mover. You know, if he was to come into a Liverpool team, I don't think he just transforms the team straight away, in my opinion. I might be completely wrong. Maybe I haven't seen enough of him. Of course, I've watched Real Madrid in the Champions League and occasionally in La Liga. But he doesn't move me in that way. So that's just my opinion. But in terms of this rumor, I don't see it being realistic at all. So we've probably got to put this one to bed. A player that has been linked to us previously is Ola Aina. Now, the current rumor surrounding his future is that he is on his last, I'd say last month or two actually. His contract is on the verge of expiring, but he apparently he does have the option of extending a 1 year deal with the club. So they have the option to activate, and of course he has to say you know if he wants to stay on board or not. I think it kind of depends on what happens with Forest because if they finish in the Champions League position, which is a possibility, but not a strong one as it probably was a few weeks ago because they have dipped in form and they are moving down the table. They're currently sixth in the table right now. So, regards to Ola Aina, he might want to just weigh his options at the end of the season and then make his move from there onwards. Uh, would he be a good option for Liverpool? I think he would be, to be fair. If Trent Alexander-Arnold does decide to leave, it would make the more logical sense to sign a player of experience because we've got a young right back in Conor Bradley. So some fans might not favour to have two young right backs, and they'd rather have one experienced and one young right back to kind of learn off the experienced one, and then provide that cover and stability to our defense. So for me, on a free transfer, it's a no-brainer. I take all I know all day long. Um, whether it happens or not remains to be seen. He could, you know, extend his stay for another season at Nottingham Forest. So only time will tell. We'll get a bit more of a clearer idea of what the future holds for Ola Aina. And if he's available for free transfer, I do see Liverpool being one of the clubs that is knocking on his door. Next rumour, and that is Hugo Larsson. Now, the Frankfurt midfielder is being linked with a move to Liverpool, and it's no surprise. He has been previously linked with us a few months ago, especially in the January window, from what I remember. He's a very interesting player, very industrious in terms of how he plays. Um, I'd regard him more as a box-to-box midfielder rather than a player that can suit our sort of double pivot formation. He can play there, but I feel like he's more, bit more forward-minded sort of player. But he's industrious. He's got legs on him. He covers a lot of ground. He's energetic. He's got a decent shot on him as well. So he'd be a very interesting addition to the squad. My personal opinion, I would like us to go for a different profile, not really a box-to-box midfield, because I feel like we have that in Gravenberch and we have that in Curtis Jones and McAllister as well. I think we need to sign someone that's a bit more defensive minded, more of a number six, more of a sitter, but can also set the tempo with their playmaking ability. I feel like that's the profile we need to get in the summer window. So good player, decent player from what I've seen. Uh, but for me, not the profile. I think we need a defensive minded midfielder for next summer. And another player that I guess does fit the bill is Angelo Stiller. Now, this defensive midfielder signed a new contract with his current club, which is Stuttgart. So I'm not sure if he is available. I believe he did have a release clause, which was around 15, 20 million. So his release clause, I'm assuming, has been increased. So he could still be a realistic option, but we'd have to pay probably about 30 million to acquire his services. Now, I've not seen him too much, to be fair, from what I've seen in terms of compilation videos. He looks good, but I don't know if he's a game changer for us. Like if he'd come in, I'd see him more of a squad player. Whereas I'd like to sign someone who is challenging Gravenberch and McAllister, and in fact is heavily rotated with the other two midfielders because I feel like there are games where we we might need a bit more of a defensive minded midfielder, and that player would bring that balance to our team. Or it could be where we kind of, you know, we don't place the balls like and we go for like a flat midfield three, and then you've got your new signing plus Gravenberch and McAllister to be industrious, but at the same time be a creative outlet. With McAllister showing that ability this season, and Groundberg having box to box ability as well, and can also present that on the table as well. So for me, the next sort of profile would be an Angelo Stiller. I was about to call him Ben Stiller there. Angelo Stiller. Um, I don't know. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I feel like we could probably do a bit better, in my opinion. But maybe because I've not seen too much of him, I can't give you a strong opinion to say he's a great fit or if he's not the right fit for us. But I'll probably try and catch a Stuttgart game before the season concludes, just to see how he plays in the full 90 minutes, and I'll get a better indication there. But his name has been circulating quite a bit, has been doing the rounds this week, so looks like he's definitely a player on our shortlist. So remains to be seen what happens. Now, this is the rumor that was circling today. We're not signing both, but Ekitike and Benjamin Sesko have been identified as two of Liverpool's primary striking targets. Now, in terms of Ekitike, I do like him. I think he's a good player. I think he's got great potential. I think he's definitely one for the future. But call me selfish, but I want someone that's ready made to come in right now. And I feel like for Ekitike to join Liverpool, he's going to be signed as a project player. He's going to, take his time to get used to how we play, and he will have an impact. I think, in my opinion, but probably not in comparison to an Isak who's accustomed to the league already. But he does share similar traits to Isak, so I guess if you can't get Isak, probably get someone that shares the same kind of characteristics and could be the next Isak, I guess, on paper. And Ekitike would fit that bill. So if we weren't able to acquire a striker like Isak or Alvarez or Osimhen, then I guess Ekitike would be the one that you end up targeting. Someone that's not the big name now, but has the potential of being a top player in world football. The fella alongside him in Benjamin Sesko, I've never been impressed with him, and I don't mean to be rude when I say that out loud. Whenever I've seen him play for his club. I've seen him play for his national team. He's never impressed me. Maybe I don't give him that good luck, but whenever I've seen him play, he's always looked below average, mediocre, and very raw in front of goal. And I don't want us to sign another Darwin Nunez. That's not the profile we need. I need someone that's accomplished, clean cut in front of goal. Not a working process. I don't want that type of play anymore. So if it was between the two, I'd go for Ekitike if we weren't able to acquire a player like Isak or an Alvarez. But Sesko, for me, I'd be slightly disappointed if he ends up being the number 9 we signed this summer. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But these two names have been circulating. They also, especially Sesko, his name has been linked with Arsenal. So I hope Arsenal do us a favor and actually sign him, because I do not rate the striker in that way. Um, But yeah, only time will tell. So that is the end of my Liverpool transfer talk. Uh, show here, we've got a couple of comments here. Junior 2010, be yourself, Junior. He said, W, be yourself for your comment there. He said, we need to sign Kirk ASAP. Do you know what's funny? You might have a point there, Junior, because rumors circling regarding Real Madrid, because they need a left back. So maybe they've earmarked Kirkes as a target. I think Kirkes to Liverpool, I'm not saying it's done deal, but I think that is going to happen this summer. I believe they are acquiring another left back. I've forgotten his name now. His name completely gone from my mind. It's the Girona left back. Let's have a look. There is name Miguel Gutierrez. So they have a buyback clause of signing the player, and he's had a fantastic season for Girona. So I feel like the buyback clause, I believe, is around 5 million euros, which is peanuts. So, if they were to get him back, he'd actually fit in right away. So I think that would be the most likely signing for Real Madrid at left back position. Um, but with Ancelotti not being there, maybe the rumored manager target is Xabi Alonso. So if Xabi Alonso was to go there, maybe he'd want to bring someone like Grimaldo from by Leverkusen because that's the player that would definitely fit that left back position to the team. So you can't say for sure, but my feeling is that Kerkez will be a Liverpool player this summer. So only time will tell, and we have to wait and see, I guess. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to Junior for your comments there. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, in terms of upcoming shows, I will be doing a live watch along this Sunday of the Chelsea versus Liverpool game, plus a match reaction show later in that evening. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you know what time I'm going live. And if you'd like to come on and have your say, feel free to join the match reaction show and of course get involved in the live chat as well. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.